Hi everybody and welcome to English for You. I'm Pat.
I'm Nikki.
And we're starting our 3-day literature article for this month. It's called The Lovely Bones. Before we get into it, have you read any good books recently?
Yes, I've been reading this book called The Interpreter of Melodies.
Okay. Melodies or malady?
Oh, melodies.
Malady. Malady is like an illness, a problem.
Yeah, but it's not actually about melodies. It's about people's mutual understanding and kind of stuff.
Okay, that's pretty good. I recently reread The Count of Monte Cristo because we wrote about it for one of our other magazines. I wanted to try to remember the story. Right now, I'm reading a selection of short stories about, like, what if the world was different kind of thing. Just what if one thing changed? How would that affect the world? So what if the Chinese had discovered America first by coming from the other side and landing in California? How would that change history? Those kinds of stories. They're all short stories, but it's quite interesting to imagine these kinds of worlds. Okay, that is our introduction, so let's get into The Lovely Bones and find out about the story.
Reading The Lovely Bones. Susie Salmon, like the fish, is just a lively junior high school student in Norristown, Pennsylvania, U.S. That is, until she is brutally murdered on her way home from school by her neighbor, Mr. Harvey. Now she must watch from her personal heaven as her family struggles with the tragedy. Later, the police find one of Susie's bones and bring it to her family. Susie's father, Jack, along with her sister, Lindsay, soon suspects Mr. Harvey, but they can't find any evidence to connect him to the crime. Susie watches over her killer and discovers that he has murdered many other women and children. Susie has one connection to the living world. When Susie's spirit leaves her body, her classmate Ruth sees it pass. Ruth knows that something is wrong and forms a close friendship with Susie's school sweetheart, Ray Singh. The police continue their investigation, but the trail runs cold. Jack, who can't accept that her killer got away, begins to take matters into his own hands. As he does so, his marriage falls apart.
So the article begins by saying Susie Salmon, like the fish, is just a lively junior high school student in Norristown, Pennsylvania, US. So that bit in inverted quotes, like the fish, that's probably something she says when someone asks her name, like, my name's Susie Salmon. Salmon, yeah, like the fish, spelt the same way. And we also describe Susie as lively. That means she's full of life. She's outgoing, she's talkative, she likes doing things and being with people. She's not really a shy, quiet person. Now, we can describe a place as lively as well if it's full of people and activity, but it's a good word to describe a person who likes to chat with other people and do fun things. So we could say, in the corner of the restaurant was a group of lively teenagers who were laughing and joking with each other.
课文一开始就介绍 Susie Salmon 这个女孩，她的个性呢是一个很 lively 的美国高中生。当我们形容一个人很 lively， 意思就是这个人精力充沛，或者是他很活跃。那通常我们看到幼稚园的小朋友很活泼、好动、跑来跑去，我们就可以形容他们是 lively children。那例句说，在这个餐厅的一角有一群很活泼的青少年们正在嬉笑。
So we have a nice start to the article, but things go bad right away. The story continues, that is, meaning she's a lively high school student, until she is brutally murdered on her way home from school by her neighbor, Mr. Harvey. Now, if something is done brutally, it's done in a very nasty, violent way with no emotion or care from the person who does it.
所以这边课文看起来一切都很美好，但是直到 Susie 被 brutally murder。brutally 是副词，意思就是残酷、残忍的。那它的形容词是 brutal， 或者是我们也可以说 cruelly， 或者是 violently. So this is a very nasty murder.
That's right. So in the article, we're using murder as a verb, though it can be used as a noun as well. To murder someone is to kill them in a way that's planned and done on purpose. It can be done while you're angry, but it's not an accident. Now, murder is a crime, it's illegal, so if a soldier shoots an enemy soldier in a war, that's not murder. But a man shooting another man in an argument about money or something like that, he is murdering that man, he's killing him, it's a crime. So we could say, the police know who murdered the dead man, but they don't know where that person is hiding.Murder 在这里是动词，然后它意思是谋杀，它也可以当作名词来使用。那 murder 和 kill 不同的地方就在于kill 可能是意外或者是没有计划的，但是 murder 谋杀就是有计划的去杀一个人。那还有另外一个字呢，它也是有类似的意思，是 assassinate。它的动词，它是动词，意思是暗杀。可它的意思其实跟 murder 很像，means to kill someone famous or important. For example, a president. So back to the book. Usually.When the main character in a book dies, right.
It's the end of the story.
Usually, but not here. We see that now she, or Susie, must watch from her personal heaven as her family struggles with the tragedy. So we're still telling her story. It goes on after she dies.And now we see her family is struggling. To struggle is to go through a difficult time.Maybe someone is having to deal with a big problem or a problem that can't be solved. It feels like these people or you're fighting a battle that you just can't win. We could say someone is struggling with an illness, struggling with a difficult task, or in here the family are struggling to kind of understand what's happened and deal with the fact their daughter has been murdered.We could also say, here's an example sentence, Nancy had so much homework that she struggled to complete it all on time.
Struggle 是动词，指的是苦苦挣扎，或是面对一些困难所经历的奋斗和努力。那在课文这里呢，就是说 Susie 她从一个特别的视角来看她的家人，因为她被谋杀的这件事情挣扎，所以她的家人很难接受这个事实。So what happens next?
Well, we see that later the police find one of Susie's bones and bring it to her family.Next,
the article says Susie's father, Jack, along with her sister Lindsay, soon suspects Mr. Harvey. Along with B 指的就是说 A 和 B。那在这边课文我们就指的是 Jack 和 Lindsay。我们也可以说 Jack together with her sister.Yeah,
we could say Jack and her sister, her father Jack and her sister Lindsay. So we should also look at the verb suspect here. Both of them, her father and her sister, suspect Mr. Harvey. To suspect something means to believe it is true without any real proof.You have a feeling, maybe a few facts or details that seem to show something is true, but you can't say for sure. Now here we're saying they suspect Mr. Harvey. When you suspect a person, it means you think they committed a crime or did something, usually, but not always, bad. So in our article, the sentence means that Jack and Lindsay Salmon, that's Susie's dad and sister, think Mr. Harvey murdered Susie. They're fairly sure or they have a feeling that he did it. Here's another example sentence. The boss suspects that Brian was the one who stole things from the office.Suspect
是动词，指的就是怀疑或是认为某件事情是可能的。那在这里课文的意思就是他的爸爸和妹妹怀疑他们的邻居 Mr. Harvey 杀了 Susie。那 suspect 也可以当成名词，就会变成 suspect， 指的就是嫌疑犯或者是可疑的分子。For example, the suspects are being questioned by the police.
Okay, so the father and the sister, they suspect Mr. Harvey. They really think he's the murderer. They want to catch him. They want the police to catch him. Exactly. The story continues, but they can't find any evidence to connect him, that's Mr. Harvey, to the crime. So this is the problem if you suspect someone. You only suspect them. You don't have evidence. So evidence is facts that might show that something is true or false. It's just facts. It's a detail, like finding someone's DNA or looking at the murder weapon. All of these these are evidence in a criminal case. Now, here's an important thing. Evidence is different from proof. Evidence just shows something. It's a fact, but we're not always sure what it shows. But proof is evidence that shows something for sure. So, if there's a murder, police will gather evidence and hope that some of this evidence is proof that they can use to put someone in prison. So we could say, for example, Sherlock Holmes spent an hour in the dead man's room looking for evidence.
Evidence 是名词，指的就是证据或是证明。那和 proof 比起来，它是比较不确定的。Proof is more like a fact, but evidence is more like reasons to believe something might be true.
Yeah, like if you get the clothes and you see blood on the clothes, you go, that's evidence. And then you check the evidence, and if you see, okay, that's the dead person's blood, the killer wore these clothes, that clothes belongs to the killer.
And that's concrete proof.
Yes.
And we always need evidence when there has been a crime.
That's right. So a crime is anything that breaks the law, or we could say anything that is against a law. So a crime could be anything from driving too fast to stealing something from a store to killing someone, murdering someone. There are lots of different types of crimes. Some you punish by giving the person a fine, they have to pay money. Others you punish by giving people time in prison. We can also use this word, a crime, to mean breaking the law in general. For example, we could say crime is getting worse in this city. That means more laws are being broken. Now, in terms of the verb we use, we can say carry out a crime, but the best verb to use is commit, C-O-M-M-I-T, commit. Some people will say do a crime, but this isn't really the proper English, so the best verb to use is commit a crime. So here's another example sentence using crime. The man was found guilty of the crime and was sent to prison.
Crime 是名词，指的就是罪行或者是违法的事情 ，an illegal act。所以当我们要说犯罪的时候呢，我们会用到动词 commit a crime. And if we're talking about the person, then someone commits a crime, we call them a criminal.
Criminal, that's right.
就是罪犯。And through all this, Susie is still watching her family, right?
Right. The article says Susie watches over her killer. So she's seeing what Mr. Harvey's doing and discovers that he has murdered many other women and children. So this, we call this person, there's a special word for it, serial killer. Do you know what the Chinese is for that?
连续杀人犯
Okay, there we go. So he's a kind of person who kills lots of people. He's maybe got some kind of mental problem that sort of gets him to do this, or he's just evil, whatever.
Now, as a spirit, Susie can do much, but she's not helpless. We see that the article says Susie has one connection to the living world.
Right, so maybe that's somebody she can maybe give messages to or something like that. But who is it? Well, we see in the article that when Susie's spirit, that's kind of like her, you could say like her ghost. I suppose. When Susie's spirit or soul or whatever leaves her body, her classmate Ruth sees it pass. So she kind of like, huh? I think I saw something there.
Next, we see that the article says Ruth knows that something is wrong and forms a close friendship with Susie's school sweetheart, Ray Tsai.
Sing.
Sing.
Yeah, it's pronounced sing. So this is I guess maybe she wants to get to know him, maybe somebody she can talk to, like, I think something's wrong, I've got this feeling that there's,
I saw your girlfriend.
Exactly, something like that she was killed, I got a feeling about who did it. And we call this guy Ray Singh, Susie's sweetheart. We can call someone sweetheart to be nice. You might say, hey, sweetheart, here's, I made you a cup of tea. You might say that to a family member. We could call somebody a sweetheart if they're a kind, generous person. Oh, he's such a sweetheart. He's always nice to old people and that kind of thing. But if you are somebody else's sweetheart, if you're someone's sweetheart, then you've been maybe dating that person, you've got a crush on them. It's usually some kind of romance. Now, if somebody is like a high school sweetheart, then we kind of mean college kids, school kids, college sweetheart, but it's not the kind of word you'd use to describe older people in a relationship.
我们可以用 sweetheart 来形容一个很贴心、很体贴的人。那我们也常常会听到情侣彼此之间会用这个昵称来互称对方。And when we see people who have been together forever, and maybe they started dating since high school.
Yeah.
We call them high school sweethearts.
That's right, or college sweethearts if that's when they started dating. So the article continues. Time is passing in this story, and we see the police continue their investigation, but the trail runs cold. So an investigation is a very detailed process of finding out all the facts and details about something to discover the truth or to make a final judgment. So there will be an investigation of a crime, but you could also have an investigation of a restaurant to check that it's clean, or an investigation of a factory to make sure all the machines are still working properly.
Investigation 是 investigate 的名词，那意思就是调查。通常这个行动呢，会是由警探 detective 或者是检察官 prosecutor 来执行。So, what does it mean if the trail runs cold?
Good question. So for a criminal case idea, if a trail runs cold, that means there isn't enough evidence for the police to arrest anyone, or the evidence leads nowhere. There's just not enough facts for them. We can also use the trails run cold if you're following someone and that person has escaped. So if a person or an animal is leaving a trail behind them to show where they've been, it'll be warm if it's a new, recent trail, but cold if it's an old trail and the thing or person that left it is a long way away.
Trail 指的就是踪迹或者是痕迹 The trail runs cold 指的就是找不到任何的蛛丝马迹 And how does this affect Susie and her family?
Well, we see that Jack, remember that's her dad, Jack, who can't accept that her killer got away, begins to take matters into his own hands. To get away means to escape, generally without punishment, and often without anyone having any idea you did something bad.
Jack 没有办法接受这个杀人凶手 got away. Get away 指的就是脱逃或者是做坏事而没有被发现。So what does Jack do?
He takes matters into his own hands, which means you start to do things yourself instead of waiting for other people to do something. You accept the responsibility and start taking action.
于是他就亲自来处理这些问题，他不想要等警察处理了。But you should leave a crime investigation to the police, right?
Right, that's the right thing to do, and you could cause trouble if you try to be the cop or detective yourself. It can cause other problems too. We see that day one of this article ends by saying, as he does so, his marriage falls apart. To fall apart is to end or fall to pieces. If clothes fall apart, they just become too old and they tear. The same could be true of furniture. But if a marriage falls apart, then there are problems between husband and wife, and the marriage stops being a real marriage. Maybe they separate, get divorced, or just stop talking to one another and acting like a family.
Fall apart 可以指的是实质物理上的东西破碎或者是散掉。For example, my old boots are falling apart. 那又或者是这边说到呢，就是一段关系或是一个东西的瓦解破裂。For example, his life fell apart when his wife died. But I hope the story has a happy ending.
We'll have to wait till tomorrow to find out. But before we leave you for today, let's go to our For You Chat question.
For You Chat.
So the question is, why do you think Susie continues to watch over her family and kill her?
I think she couldn't let go.
Yeah, that's often if you read a lot of ghost stories, then if the dead person can't leave and move on, they still have something they just can't...
Unfinished business.
That's the best way to say it. That's a really good way to say it. Yeah, so that's probably why. And it's not just, I want to see the killer punished. It's maybe she didn't get a chance to say goodbye to her family and kind of make sure they're all right without her. So it's kind of two sets of unfinished business. But yeah, I think that is exactly the right reason. So, will she manage to kind of really take action and make sure that Mr. Harvey, her killer, gets caught and punished? We'll have to find out tomorrow when we read part 2 of the story. We'll see you then. Bye for now.
Bye!
Vocabulary Review. Lively. Jenny's birthday party was very lively, as there was a lot of singing and dancing. Murder. The man murdered the woman who knew about his terrible secrets and then buried her dead body. Struggle. Paul is trying to do better in math class, but he still struggles to understand some lessons. Suspect. I don't know who destroyed my garden, but I suspect it was my neighbor's dog. Evidence. There was no evidence that suggested Bob had killed anyone, so he was allowed to leave the police station. Crime. The man killed his wife and was put in prison for the terrible crime.
智慧小补帖
Brutally. Investigation.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net